Hello, wonderful people. So the slogan of the week is Poor Me Syndrome, PMS. Sorry, fellas, but it's actually a pretty accurate description because, like I shared in the actual devotion from Wednesday that I posted on Wednesday, it really can just get a grip on us and we become just obsessed and convinced of the total wretchedness of our lives or ourselves or whatever. And of course, the big problem here is just being stuck on self rather than God or others. And I shared a couple of Bible verses that just remind us very plainly that, life this side of heaven is troublesome. A lot of difficult things happen in life, even when it's not tragic, even when we don't have childhood trauma, there are all sorts of griefs, and that's just normal. And I know for myself, as I've shared this week, um, it's all magnified if I am just focused on myself and, think I'm alone and I'm the only one and mine is worse than everybody's. I mean, I don't need to share all of the many examples of how so many other people are, we don't usually have to look very far to find people that are suffering a lot more than we are. And paradoxically, that many times those people are happier, which is a matter of attitude and maybe being stripped down to bare bones so that we're not so attached to all of these external circumstances for our joy and our peace. And, that's a fine segue to the little detour I want to take on this subject, because I'm even going to go further. And actually, Jesus went further because I'm going to say that a lot of times the things that trigger self pity, the life challenges, the problems, the injustices. Sorry, that's my alarm going off on my phone. Um, are really blessings. And this is such a radical notion. And I mean, I can take it a really long way, and perhaps I will at some point. But right now, I just want to point out, without going too deeply, that, the Sermon on the Mount, blessed be the poor in spirit. You're blessed if you're persecuted. You're blessed if you're poor. You're blessed if you're uh, unjustly persecuted. You're blessed if you're slandered. I mean, that's so radical. And for us, and Jesus said it. So, we got to believe it's true. Not only that, but of course, Jesus himself suffered, terrible indignities, and he was the Son of God. He was God. Okay. So, um, and then in Luke, he does talk about, being blessed if you're poor or you're hungry, blessed if you mourn in the Sermon on the Mount, all these things that would normally trigger self pity. And also, I'm reminded that in the book of Acts, which is the early church after Jesus ascends into heaven, I mean, it's no, nonstop party. It's struggle, it's persecution, it's, human conflict among the apostles. It's loss, it's, imprisonment. I mean, it's just, one thing after another. And, some of it is the stuff that's common to life, and some of it is just the price of being a Christ follower. So, and here I'm going to go even further. Jesus said we're blessed. In other words, we're blessed when all of these things happen that we think are just so awful. So, one, not only are they common to man and that we should expect them, but two, we're actually blessed because of it. And my own personal experience is that, uh, and I speak truly from personal experience and also from observation, but is that if you are suffering all those things, if it brings you to your knees and makes you more dependent on God, you are blessed. You're blessed because you are, uh, your peace, your joy, your security is not grounded in all of these other things. It's grounded on Him, and He is entirely sufficient. And, the problem is that we do attach our security to a lot of other people, places, and things, the job, the spouse, the kids, the money, the romantic relationships, whatever. And those things are not stable. They're not, and they've never been designed. They're blessings. They may be blessings, but not if they take us away from God, because He is ultimately where we're going to find our peace, our purpose, our joy, no matter what's happening. So, and that is definitely a reason to not feel self pity. And then the other thing I want to say that is also vitally important and has been my experience, and it's also well documented, not only in the Bible, but in the life around us that we see, is that God uses suffering to make us the person He designed us to be. And that's an extraordinary thing. Um, we don't, I mean, I don't know, not all of you are going to be familiar with Bible stories, but people like Joseph or David or Moses, not only did they have terrible childhood trauma, but then they subsequently suffered terrible injustices and all sorts of problems and challenges, and they were all formative. In other words, they were designed to make them the person that God wanted them to be, and then to use all of that accumulated experience to help others. And, we know this in recovery because that's what the steps tell us. And in the 12th step, specifically for those who may not be familiar, when, we're carrying the message, we're now marshaling this experience that we've had and helping other people with our experience. And so I'm going to invite you to really look at, if you're in the middle of it right now, or if you are, just curious about it, to explore these Bible stories and not only Bible stories. I mean, we all know that many of the most extraordinary, successful people in life have many times endured extraordinary hardships to get where they are. And they were probably born into hardship. I mean, I'm not going to name any names, but there are many people that were born to struggling single mothers or born in poverty, faced a lot of abuse, faced a lot of want, and they marshaled that. It made them stronger. It made them, more compassionate. It made them. It fueled a desire to grow, and drove them to God. So beyond accepting, just to recap our main points here. One, not only is suffering uh, common to man. And, we don't need to feel self pity. It's not helpful. It paralyzes us, it makes us miserable. And just realizing that we're not alone in our suffering, it's just part of life, can really diffuse the feelings, those negative feelings that, frankly, limit, totally limit our joy and limit our usefulness to other people. Um, and secondly, that especially if you're living a life of faith, which is very counterculture, and you're following Jesus, you're going to face trials as Jesus did and as the early church did. Now, we don't identify with that so much in the modern American church because it's so comfy, cozy, and prosperity oriented. But that really isn't the pattern of the authentic Christian church. And there's no precedent for that in the New Testament. Um, and I challenge you to find an example that can justify the kind of comfy, cozy, prosperous, feel good church that are so common today. But finally, and maybe more importantly, that suffering is formative, and that if we lean into God and see and seek what God is doing through our suffering in terms of refining us, strengthening us, helping us overcome our defects or our sinful natures, empowering us really because we're strengthened, as it talks about in other passages. I don't want to make this so scripture heavy. um, that we can really reframe our suffering as sort of a superpower, and cooperate with what God is doing. Not that He caused the suffering, just how He can employ it to make us the people He designed us to be, and to bless other people with our experience, strength, and hope. Anyway, I hope this blessed you, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. And until next time, bless you. Bye.